Welcome to Radiant Midlife, the podcast for women who know they're here to lead differently. I'm your host, Tara Preston, midlife matriarchal awakening and transition guide, sacred nourishment and feminine prosperity mentor, creator of the Flower of Life Akashic Healing Method and certification, serving women globally for over 14 years. Here we explore midlife as a sacred portal of rebirth, a time for cycle breakers, visionaries, and mothers of new paradigms to awaken their power and rise as matriarchs. Each week, we'll dive into soulful conversations that blend the spiritual and the practical, from feminine leadership, womb wisdom, and prosperity to holistic wellness, hormones, and herbal support. Everything you need to feel nourished, radiant, and free in this next evolution of your life. Because midlife isn't an ending, it's the beginning of your most powerful chapter yet. Before we begin, I'd love to gift you my free ebook, Sacred Nourishment for Midlife Radiance, a beautiful guide filled with nourishing rituals, herbal wisdom, and feminine prosperity practices to support your vitality and radiance. You can download it through the link in the show notes. Welcome home. Enjoy this episode of Radiant Midlife. Hi, and welcome to the final episode of the Radiant Midlife 10-day podcast audio series. I thank you so much for joining us. And as the host of the Radiant Midlife Secret Series podcast, I wanted to pop on and first thank you for those of you that have been joining and following along, and just bring a little bit of closure to the series itself. For me, being able to drop in with each speaker was really a reminder of the importance of listening to our bodies. And it's something that we cannot override in this pivotal midlife shift. So if there's anything that you took from each and every one of the speakers, and I was really reflecting on that over the course of our time, like each speaker pulled a thread forward of how the body speaks in midlife, how it's asking to be heard, how it's asking to be honored, nourished, strengthened, how we're ultimately coming into a new recalibration of our body, of our power, of our vitality as women, if we're willing to choose a new timeline for ourselves, if we're willing to do the work to stabilize a new foundation. So my podcast contribution for today is midlife is a return to radiance. It is a return to radiance, right? But so much of what we're being fed in the current cultural narrative is that it's a decline, is that it's a crisis, when actually it is a portal into more of who we are and the truth of who we're being called to be in the world. It is a return to radiance because we're at this important threshold where we get to take stock of what is no longer working in our lives. And sometimes that shows up through body symptoms. Sometimes it shows up through depletion. And sometimes it's a deeper sense of life just not feeling like it fits anymore. So as someone who's worked with women deeply through soul initiation and midlife transformation for a long time, feeling like life doesn't fit anymore is often, one of the key signs that our soul is speaking to us. Our soul is saying something doesn't feel right. My life feels too small to encompass the fullness of a deeper part of my expression in the world. And in order to make space for that, we need to recalibrate our systems on multiple levels. So I wanted to talk about midlife being this return to radiance, this reclamation of vitality, life force, and leadership in the second half of life. And that midlife in the second half of life is a doorway into more. It can be a doorway into a reclamation of our radiance as well. And also an invitation into more of our purpose in the world through this beautiful portal of midlife initiation. And so I'm just bringing this concept forward to you as someone who has worked very deeply with the divine feminine for 15 years on this path. One thing that I know for sure is that we are given these gateways, these doorways of initiation along our woman's path, right? With our first menses and that initiation into becoming a young woman and our creational power, right? Our creative sexual energy. And through the doorway of motherhood, whether you chose to have children or not, right? It's a doorway. And through these doorways, there is an identity shift, right? There is an opportunity to really recalibrate, to reassess what no longer works, a deeper truth of who we are becoming, and to initiate into a new identity, a new evolution of our purposeful expression. Midlife is no different, right? Midlife is also this portal that calls us into bigger expression of who we are. And I believe the body upgrade, the body recalibration becomes a really important foundation for that we are actually setting the stage for the best, most potent times in our life experience. However, with the shifting hormonal changes in our bodies, with the way that our bodies start to shift, even just with the muscle mass that we start to lose, right? With the decades of system overload from often, caregiving, we can't progress into the most powerful stage of our life without taking care of, without listening to, without recalibrating the body foundations. So it can feel a little overwhelming. And I know it was for me 4 or 5 years ago. I'm 48 now. So for me, it was around 45, 44. My body was really speaking. And I knew that I needed to start to get my body foundations in a strong, robust, nourished place. I had been working with women for 15 years, and one of the key pieces that, was a core theme in my work was the mother wound. So I also wanted to bring this piece forward as well, because so much of the depletion, when we're talking about overloading the system, particularly the feminine system, which is meant to operate in a very cyclical way so that we can create renewable, sustainable energy, right? We don't often in our society have the space to be able to honor our cyclical energy like that. And so, after decades of overriding the way that we're actually inherently meant to build our power as women, we often come into a space of deep depletion, rooted in the mother wound, which is a very old wound that travels through our lineage. And for someone who's done, a lot of work with the Akashic records, we're even thinking about a bigger collective wound known as the mother wound that has impacted us through many past lives for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And some would say, this really ties into the suppression of the divine feminine that began 5,000 years ago with the rise of the patriarch, right? And the patriarch just being this consciousness of wounded masculine energy that suppressed the feminine because it was threatening. It was threatening to the feminine. And then we swung over to a more hyper wounded masculine way of being. But the impact of that for women, right, and for this consciousness of feminine on the planet was deep and far reaching. And it's known as the mother wound. And so it is this disconnect from our goddess nature, from our creational power, from our intrinsic value as women, from our cyclical nature, and from our ability to see our own beauty, our own worth, our own potential. It often keeps us seeking validation and approval externally. And if we think about the mother wound, it is just this separation from the divine mother consciousness. And so, as young girls, very often, we never had that reflection back to us from our mothers because they didn't either. They never had it. They never knew how to bring this presence of a robust female energy that could honor her own cyclical nature, that could anchor her power in the home from a source of radiance. When we're anchored into our creational power as women, we can create, lead, and build sustainable wealth from a totally different muscle, right? But we're so conditioned to seek validation, to people please, to override our own systems and our own bodies, to um, to buy into this hyper masculine society, right? To somehow receive some sense of safety. But after years and if not decades, we end up harming ourselves. It creates a lot of depletion in our energetic system, which isn't meant to operate like that. And so years and decades of really overloading the system through caregiving, through raising families, through just responsibilities, through building out career paths, to um, really, I see women so much of the time just really holding it all together. And we haven't learned how to anchor our power in a way where we can sustainably hold our families, hold our creations, hold our energy without actually using a more masculine kind of way of clutching that tends to burn our systems out. And because of the mother wound, we've been really disconnected from that. And I believe as we come into this space of midlife, we're given an opportunity to be like, oh, wait, what isn't working for me anymore? Where have I been working out of obligation? Where have I not been honoring my truth? Where have I been working in my leadership in a way where it hasn't been sustainable? Where have I been pushing and going and clutching and holding on more than my system can actually handle? And is there a new way of doing it? And I believe there is, that there is a model of success and leadership, one rooted in um, feminine, creational, divine principles, something I've been teaching and guiding women through for over 15 years. Founder of the Akashic Women's School. I've got a whole certification that I've been running for the last 6 years, which really speaks to a lot of these concepts. Been working globally with women for the last 15 years as well. And so what I'm speaking to here is possible. It can feel daunting though, because we haven't really been shown this model. We haven't really been shown this path of being able to recalibrate our energy into a new space of leadership and vitality and radiance, right? It requires letting go of the way that we have been holding ourselves, pushing, going, clutching. And that can feel a little bit scary, right? Because we're asking ultimately to trust our more feminine nature to be able to create vitality, prosperity, and leadership. But it is possible. It's actually much more possible, much more powerful, much more sustainable, right? And even if we think about nature, right? If we think about nature, and if we honor nature, and if we honor the seasons of nature, right? If we honor the seasons of nature, then our trees and our harvests and our forests and our gardens, they produce abundance naturally and cyclically and sustainably. And our feminine systems are meant to do the same, right? But we need to learn to come home to our bodies, to cultivate that connection, to listen and begin to trust our bodies again. And midlife can be and is the portal to that. All right. So I just wanted to offer just a brief share and a little bit of a closing out for this podcast series, and really an invitation to take the pieces that speak to you. It can be overwhelming. There's a lot of noise. And one of the reasons I wanted to create this podcast is to give us a space to just listen, So taking the pieces that really popped for you and making some space to honor it. For some of you, that might be, um, really taking a bigger, more holistic look at where the gap is between where you're being called, how you want to live and operate more sustainably, and where you are now. For some of you, it might be decoding some of the body symptoms that are showing up. Maybe it's like starting to deepen into and process some of the emotional baggage from carrying so much, right? From carrying so much. For others, it might be the weightlifting piece or maybe detoxing, right? And so just taking the next step, the next one or two steps. I always like to, when I'm working with clients, remind them that this is a journey. It's not something that's done in a month or 3 months. It's often a year or 2 years, maybe three. I know for myself, I'm always looking at how to deepen and strengthen and nourish my body more fully. So when we're talking about the mother wound, it is ultimately a new paradigm of leadership. It shows up in the way that we are now being asked to lead, right? How we're being asked to nurture community, nurture ourselves, nurture our families. And you simply have to look back at how you often seen your own mother or your own mother-like, I want to say roles, but that's not the right word. Your own, those that were like mother in your experience, since I don't have the words for it, right? Who held that role of mother. And you have to simply just look at how did they mother? It was often through sacrifice, overgiving, um, overgiving, overdoing, and there's another word, and again, it's not coming to me, but those are often the paradigms that women have been conditioned to um, lead in, right? And this disconnect from knowing our intrinsic beauty, our own worth, and our own value, which really is it comes from just the beauty of who you were born to be, just who you are in this space, knowing right now in this space that you are more than enough, that your presence is a contribution, and that there's nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to be to earn that validation. Right. So taking a moment, maybe it's hand over heart, hand over womb, and just really reminding yourself so that we can start to pull ourselves out of the inverted matrix, right? That has us chasing, gripping, doing, pushing, seeking validation, people pleasing, right? And recognizing that this is where it ends. We might not have had a mother who's able to hold that space for us, but in this space, we can turn the mirror towards ourselves and start to validate that within ourselves. And this is one of the key pieces of healing the mother wound as we start to return to radiance. The mother is nourishing. She's grounding, she's loving, she's compassionate, right? And so as we start to turn the mirror towards ourselves and we start to rest into the power of this present moment, she reminds us of our beauty, our power, our potential, right? And just hand over heart, hand over womb again. There's nowhere you need to be. There's nothing that you need to do. Just taking a breath in and out. You have immense power to create. This is also where I want to start to bring it to the womb, which is the root of the mother wound. We have immense creative power. Whatever the vision is that lives within you, you have the creational capacity and power to create it. But we have to believe in that creational power. We have to come home to that creational power. We have the ability to birth babies, birth businesses, birth communities and visions, right? So there's a real invitation in midlife to get out of the brain, get into the body, open the heart, get into the womb, right? Coming into our creative power and potential. Energy starts to move and flow when we can realign and drop into our creative potential and our creative power, which rests in the womb. When we can start to recalibrate our power and our energy in this space for us through deeper nourishment, through looking at restructuring our lives in a way that truly honors us. Right? When we overgive and we overextend ourselves, we're actually overriding our energetic boundaries and we create depletion. When we start to hold our power at the level of the womb and we start to honor what our vision is, what our desires are, our needs for nourishment, right? Our needs for whatever your deeper vision is, which for women, it's often connected to freedom, spaciousness, vitality, connection, intimacy, abundance, community, creativity, right? Nourishment, like foods that nourish, right? And that's the womb speaking, right? And when we start to really drop into our creative power and potential, the truth of who we are as beautiful, powerful women, that there's nowhere that we need to be and nothing that we need to do. We just need to come home to the truth of who we are and remember that right here in this space, we are worthy of love, that ultimately we can choose ourselves. We can choose our own vision. We can choose what we want. We can choose to honor ourselves. Taking a moment, breathing into the womb, and exhale. So this is, to me, the midlife initiation. This is the reclamation. Being able to prioritize yourself past years of overgiving, past the survival patterns, past the struggle, past the depletion, past the caregiving, past all of the assumed roles that we have taken on through this old paradigm of leadership, very often connected to the role that we play as mother, right? Whether we're mothering our communities or mothering our families or however it is that we're leading as women. And the question becomes, how are you mothering yourself so that you can recalibrate your system into a new place of vitality, life force, and leadership? All right. So just taking a moment, I really want you to leave with, a couple of steps from the speakers that we've had, but most importantly, as we're given this opportunity to look at as space opens in midlife, your kids are getting a little bit older, there's often opportunity for change and things to shift and move. And sometimes, our bodies are just demanding it. And regardless, it's a what do you want? How can you honor you? How can you prioritize you, your radiance, your life force, so that you can really step into this new way of embodied feminine leadership? Right? It supports sustainable feminine wealth, overflow. It builds your capacity to hold more, doing less. But it all begins with how can you choose you? What's the one step that feels so present and alive, the way you've just been wanting so deeply to honor yourself, right? Start there. Choose yourself. Integrate it, take the step, place the boundaries around it. This is how the path opens. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Sending you all so much love. If you have any questions, just hit reply and reach out. I'd love to hear what this has meant for you, what your insights were, maybe a couple of your steps, how you're going to integrate some of the wisdom and the knowledge that you're taking and moving forward. I will drop my free gift below, which is Sacred Nourishment for Midlife Radiance. It's full of just different easy recipes to nourish yourself, womb awakening practices, shadow work. It's got just 8 different sections on really how to nourish yourself, to build your capacity, to stabilize your body, and to really start to move forward into a new space of radiance in midlife. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.